Now, another part of vision is what we talk about defined vision. And we have a white paper out there. I believe it's on one of our websites where we get into a very esoteric discussion about true, stated, implied, and actual, the four different visions. You'll be able to find it under the four visions. But in reality, over time, in order to be able to help regular people understand that, and not just the people who understand extremely abstract ideas, but to bring it down to street level, it's basically, are you walking the talk or are you just talking the talk? Okay. And so your defined vision is what we would call talk. It should reflect the true vision and the stated vision of the companies. Companies spend a lot of money on coming up with their visions. And the delivered vision is, are people actually walking the talk? And if they're in balance and they're equal, then what is implied by the vision and what is actually the vision will actually mirror the talk. That means that you've distilled agreement between what you have defined and what you are delivering. So if you're walking the talk, if it's yes, it's very simply gonna be in balance. Now, if you're not walking the talk, guess what? That means you don't have agreement, it's not distilled, and that means you're going to have politics. I can guarantee you. That means you're going to have a fractured vision, and you're going to have tribal warfare among the silos, or even within the silos of the organization. I can give a beautiful example of this, but it wasn't really using the vision statement, but it was using the value statements that a company had done. And they had their 7 value statements printed on these large posters, and they asked the business leadership to put these up in your offices. And this is already 25 years ago. So they were trying to communicate as much as possible. These are the values of the company. And, they had we respect each other, we respect the environment, all the usual yada, yada, yada value statements that they put out there. Now, the business owner, or what we would call today a product owner for one of the very successful projects that we talk about in our book, he had up on his wall the value statements. And next to the value statements were check marks, and some had more, some had less, but every one of them had a check mark. Well, finally, curiosity got the best of us. And so one day we asked him, "Hey, David, what's with all the check marks on the values poster?" And he looked at us, and he looked around, ran over to the door, opened the door, looked up and down the hallway to see if anybody was around, shut the door again, ran back, unplugged his phone, and he said, "Yeah, well, every time an executive violates one of those values, I put a check mark." And it was nothing but check marks. Nothing. Okay? So, guess what? It was fractured, and everybody knew the executives talked the talk, they did not walk the talk. And that leads to organizations that are fractured, where there's chaos, anxiety, and so on in the organization. It just ends up being toxic. And that's not healthy for the people working in the organization. And in the end, it won't be healthy for the customers or other stakeholders either. So please keep in mind, as you're thinking about vision, vision is essential for making sure that you create the environment in which whatever transformation, whatever scaling effort, whatever rollout, whatever governance you're doing, that all of those can work together smoothly and the friction is eliminated. But if you're working with visions that are fractured or values that are fractured, it's not going to work well for your organization, and it's just going to create a lot of heartburn up and down the organizational structure. The sixth area is culture. And you'll notice that we put vision at the top. Vision, mission, purpose, core values and attitudes, strategies, goals, and objectives. If you look up the definition for culture, you will find that all of these words, almost without exception, are included in one way or another in the very long definitions that exist in the dictionary about culture. And you've got national culture, you've got the business culture of the organization or organizational culture, you have individual cultures, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, what we have here sort of goes from most abstract down to more concrete things that can be measured. So some people could argue, hey, purpose should go first, whatever, right? Draw it however you want. But basically, vision, mission, and purpose are quite abstract. The way we differentiate between vision and mission, vision is what we want to be. It's a future state of what we want to be in the future. Mission is the business that we're in. Okay. Now, Nokia, when they were at their top, they had one of the best vision mission statements combinations I'd ever seen in my life. It was 2 words. 2 words. Our vision is, well, actually their vision was a little bit longer than that. It was about 7 words, but the mission was 2 words. It was connecting people. That was the business that they were in, connecting people. The vision was connecting the 4 billion who aren't with the 2 billion who are, which is awesome. That's a clear vision statement, the mission statement, and the purpose, and so on. And so they had it very clear. What's really sad with the Nokia case is in 2004, they already had in their hands a production-ready touchscreen phone with a glass screen, ready to go to production in 2004, years ahead of Apple, at least 2 years ahead of Apple. And the executives, in their infinite wisdom, canned the project. So even though they had a clear mission, clear vision, clear mission, their purpose, the why, sort of seemed to derail them, perhaps. Perhaps it was their core values and attitudes. They went from being able to do creative destruction. They only focused on operational excellence instead of reinventing themselves like they did the first time around. First time around, does anybody remember what Nokia made before they made cell phones? They made rubber tires and rubber boots. And that's a huge leap to reinvent yourself, do the creative destruction necessary to become a world-class supplier of electronics and mobile phones. They did that the first time around in the early 90s. What's interesting is you've got almost the exact same leadership still in place in the early 2000s, 2004. It's the same group that did the creative destruction that made the mistake of saying, no, that's too risky. Nobody's going to want a glass screen on their phone. It will break. We're going to get all these, maintenance and warranty issues, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Nokia, after Apple III, sold however hundreds of millions that they sold. Nokia was history, and ultimately was sold to Microsoft and eventually shut down as far as the cell phone production goes. Recently I heard about they're trying to revive the cell phone part of it here in Finland, and It'll be interesting to see what they're able to do based on the current situation and the current market structure. But like Deming said, culture eats everything for lunch. And what's interesting is you can go from a startup culture like they did in the 90s to an operational excellence culture that they had in the beginning of the 2000s. And that, what they morphed into, led to their downfall. So when we're looking at transformation, we have this particular plate that needs to be spun as well. And this one impacts all of the other areas. So, the cultural journey, you have to do the same thing in the cultural journey. For the individual's vision and mission and purpose, why are they there? All of that has to link up with the team and the team's culture and the product and program culture and portfolio culture there in the organizational box and the executive culture. All of those have to be taken into consideration. Recently, we did a retrospective with an executive who was utterly shocked in one way by what one of the team members shared on a team with which we were working. And this team member, he just shared amazing things like, when I work with this team, it's the highlight of my day. When I go into the room with the team, that's like a sanctuary to me. These people on the team, they're not just team members, they've become my friends. When I see them in the hall, we'll stop, we'll talk, we'll chat. The people on this team mean more to me than the people in my group that I work with. The executive was so taken aback in one way by what was shared that he asked a couple of his reports to come in and chat with the Scrum Master and Agile Coach. How did you do that? How did you create a team where the team members were literally willing to throw themselves under the bus in order to help the team? And it was sort of interesting because it was then very clear that they had forgotten parts of their training that they had gone through with the Flow Certified Professional training, the bits and parts of it that they had gotten. Apparently, they had forgotten what was written in the book or missed it. But it's all there. The way we make teams in Flow. By the time we're through working with the teams and the product owners and the organization, the teams are just loyal beyond belief. And I'm not going to go deep into how we do that here, but if you really want to know how we do that, I'm going to be recording an entire content training for the Flow Certified Professional. And there, I will share the secret of how do you make a team that is that loyal to themselves, because that speaks the language of an executive that's looking for getting the highest performance out of a team, that wants to get the highest value out of that team, and where the environment of that team is such that those team members, without hesitation, would just throw themselves under a bus for everyone else. And so that's the kind of results organizationally and culturally that an executive in the organization box wants to see. But remember the aha curve. Coming up the aha curve on all of these 4 boxes for culture is also a multi-year trip. If you bring in external coaches who know what they're doing, they will understand very quickly how to work with the individuals and teams to get a team culture that will reflect that. Many Agile coaches and enterprise Agile coaches do not know how to do that on the right two boxes here. They don't know how to do that for the program level or for the portfolio level or up to the executive level. And again, we go through that a little bit in the Flow Certified Professional training, but for dealing with the executives and how to impact the culture and how to move the culture, we talk about that in the Flow Certified Trainer training. And so we have two levels in Flow, the professional level and the trainer level. And those that are trained to the professional level are going to be extremely effective in the individual team product boxes and quite effective in the organization box. By the time you get to a Flow Certified Trainer level, you will be extremely effective in the organization box. So just keep in mind, moving the culture, transforming the culture, it's beyond the 5 years that Sutherland and Schwaber mention in Software in 30 Days. It's probably a 7-year cycle. And at the end of the 7 years, people will look back and they'll look at what they're doing today and they'll feel like, oh, we've always done it this way. But if they would look back and saw 7 years ago, they would see a completely different culture. And all companies and organizations go through that change. It's how you guide and direct that continuous change over time that probably will make the difference whether you continue to exist as an organization or if you become part of that 25% of the Fortune 500 who no longer exists. It's up to you guys.